Hey guys, I really apologize for having been gone so long. The truth is, I just got a whole bunch of projects on my plate, and maybe I've even been a little bit lazy. But I am back. Fortunately, I tend to get dragged out of retirement when I get a good question, and recently I had one of my viewers ask a really good one. How I became an Omnist. I think it's a really interesting question. I've answered it somewhat in various videos, but I've never done a video exclusively on it. And I do think it would be helpful because everyone watching this channel has come from a different place, a different perspective, a different way in which we come to this kind of belief system. And so perhaps in sharing my experience and the way I came to it, maybe it'll do someone some good. So, long story short, I was raised a very, very conservative Christian. My parents were actually pretty understanding. They weren't real fanatical. My mother was the very strong Christian. My father was more of an agnostic. But I believed very much in God, very much in the Bible, very much in the Christian precepts. But as I got into my late teens, I started studying a lot more things. I was really huge into martial arts. And so, of course, that got me into Buddhism and meditating. And I didn't get a whole lot into the religious aspect of that, but that did come in more and more through time. As I got into my early 20s, I was studying a lot of different religions. At first, I think when I went through that, I was really trying to disprove all religions. I wanted to know for certain that the belief system I had was utterly and completely true. And there were a few catalysts that sort of sparked that off. One in particular that I remember is a conversation I had with a friend of mine about witchcraft. Now, I don't recall a whole lot about what he was saying about it, but I came off with what I would say was a rather flippant attitude towards it. Witchcraft is satanic. I just said that. Well, you know, witchcraft is satanic. Because growing up Christian, well, some Christians believe that just about everything is satanic. That's not Christianity, or perhaps their form of Christianity. It's somehow all satanic. And that was my immediate answer. It's satanic. And to my surprise, this friend of mine didn't get upset and just go, oh, because I don't know what he believed. I don't know if he believed in witchcraft or if he was just defending it because he had friends that were, or he just knew a lot about it. I have no idea. But instead of getting upset with me and saying, well, you're kind of a narrow-minded jerk, I don't recall exactly what he said, but it was something to the effect of, well, you know, maybe it wouldn't hurt to look into it a little more before you make that judgment. And it was a really good response. Afterward, I thought about it, and I realized that I was completely unprepared for the conversation. I didn't have any facts about witchcraft. I didn't really know anything about witchcraft. It was simply this statement that I had been brought up with my entire life and didn't necessarily have a whole lot behind it. Just witchcraft is evil, even if you don't know what witchcraft is. So, of course, I started researching. I started coming to understand a lot more about witchcraft. I got a huge book just called The Occult. It was everything about the occult, just all down through history. And one thing that stuck out to me was that when I looked in the very back in the index, the biggest section in the index was on Christianity. And it was kind of funny because I never really looked at Christianity as being occultic. But of course, when you realize that occult kind of refers to any type of belief in the supernatural, Christianity falls in there just as much as any other religion. They do believe in God, they do believe in angels, they do believe in miracles, etc., etc. So yes, it was an eye-opening moment for me to see all these different belief systems sort of on the same par in this book under a cult. That might sound simplistic, but the point is simply that it got me thinking along certain lines. Another major catalyst was my mother was engaged to a Moslem, which I was not happy about. I didn't have anything against him, but I knew that my mother was Christian. I knew that there was going to be a lot of strife between them. And so I wasn't terribly in favor of it. But nevertheless, I got to know this man. And he was a very deep-thinking Muslim. He had come directly from Iraq. He was a refugee who had been in the uprising against Saddam Hussein back in the 90s. And was now over here because he couldn't go back to his country. And the way that he talked about God and talked about Islam and talked about the Quran and talked about Muhammad, it was so similar to the way we talk about God and we talk about Jesus and we talk about the Bible. And in talking to him, I came to have a much wider understanding of Islam. Obviously, I'd already studied Judaism quite a bit. It was a major fascination of mine, but I had never really given Islam a whole lot of thought. And so what happened to me was, for a long time, I just didn't know what to call myself. I was studying all these religions, and even though I had begun studying them when I was younger, just to disprove everything, when I came back to those, I suppose this was probably in my mid-20s, when I came back to studying all of that, I sort of came back to it with different eyes. I'd seen a lot more, I'd met a lot more people. And to me, I think that's one of the biggest catalysts that is causing, if I can put it this way, if that's causing Omnism, is that you have so many people in this country, and so many people in a lot of countries now, who talk to each other and have to learn to get along and come to these realizations that may have been considered silly, say, back in the 50s, when we just didn't know. A lot of people never stepped outside their comfort zone. They didn't really know anything about Islam. They didn't know even anything about Judaism, or it disturbs me how many Christians I've met in my life that don't know much about Christianity. And so I went through this period of just wanting to know everything, just studying everything I possibly could, coming to it with different eyes, coming to it with an attitude of, well, maybe what I have isn't all that is. Because I saw in all these different religions, I saw a morality, I saw a code of ethics, I saw laws that were incredibly similar to what I had in Christianity. I saw an attitude towards God, towards their own holy writings, towards whatever power that be, that were very, very similar. And for a long time there, I was just what I called an open-minded Christian. That was pretty much how I referred to myself, because I didn't have a phrase for it. And I went through calling myself a universalist or a broadband universalist, or I think I called myself a neo-quantum theosophist for a while, which doesn't exactly really mean anything, but it sounded cool. And there just wasn't a phrase for what I was. So people would meet me and they would go, oh, wow, you're such an open-minded Christian. And I sort of got off on that. I enjoyed that. I loved people meeting me as a Christian and realizing that all Christians weren't as narrow-minded as perhaps the Christians that they had met. And I enjoyed that. And for a long time, I guess I sort of rode on that. Until one day, I turned around and I sort of realized, well, this isn't entirely true. I'm not really a Christian. I mean, I call myself a Christian, but I came to the realization that when I said Christian to someone else, when someone said, what do you believe? And I said, I'm a Christian, they got a certain image in their mind. And that image wasn't true. Even though I believed in the divine, I believed in the Bible, I believed in Jesus Christ, I knew that I didn't have this singularity that most Christians do. I didn't have this, I'm a Christian, I believe in Christianity. Christianity is the only way. Everybody else is going to hell. You know, I didn't have that attitude. Not that all Christians do have that attitude, but that probably was me at one time when I was much younger. And even though I'd already come to this point where I did not believe in proselytizing anymore, not that I was ever exactly a big proselytizer to begin with, but I came to the conclusion that if someone came up to you and said, hey, I'm lost, I need a belief system, I need something to believe in, I need something to hold on to, then I was glad to show them Christianity. I was glad to show them my faith and my belief system. But if I ran into someone who was Hindu, and Hindu worked for them. I mean, they'd been a Hindu for years. It brought them peace, it brought them joy, it brought them, you know, whatever my Christianity brought me. It brought them that, and there was absolutely no reason to try and convert them from their belief system to my belief system. But regardless of all of that, I was still in this haze, this sort of twilight area where I didn't know what to call myself. And I got deeper and deeper into this. I was studying Judaism more and more. I was studying Kabbalah and Sufism, and that was helping me connect to the Eastern religions, to Buddhism and Hinduism and Taoism. And I was sort of putting all of this together into what? I didn't know. I had no idea what to call it. And so I think that was probably during the time when I just started calling myself a broadband universalist. It doesn't exactly mean anything, but it was something that sort of separated me from the Unitarians. Not that I have any problem with Unitarians, but I knew that my belief system was a little different than that. And there just wasn't a word for what I believed until I ran into Omnism. And I found that word, and it kind of clicked with me. I said, I said, yes, this is finally a phrase that is so wide and so open that I think I can put myself under it. Because I didn't want to put myself under an ideology where someone would say, oh, well, he's that. Oh, of course. Because I knew I probably wasn't. No matter what, if you met me, I probably wasn't what you thought I was. And so I personally needed that phrase. Not everyone needs a phrase. I think there's a lot of omnists out there that don't call themselves omnists, don't call themselves anything. They're much like I was before I ran to that term. I think a lot of omnists may never use the term. It's just a word, it's just a label, it's just a phrase. But that was my journey. That was how I came to Omnism. And I'm hoping that in telling you that story, some people relate to it. I've already run into some people on this channel which do relate, which had a very similar progression towards Omnism. So in closing, that's it. That's pretty much the story. I will probably go into more depth later if anybody wants any more details. It's good to be back. I'm the Urban Omnist, and hopefully you'll get a lot more videos soon.